Welcome to this entry of the Bookish Diaries. Helen, will you introduce our guest for the day?
Absolutely. We have an amazing author with us today. Her name is Cecy Robson. She's a New York Times, USA Today, and international best-selling author. As an immigrant of Salvador, that's a word and a half, with proud Nahua. Is that it, Nahua?
Igual pipil.
Yes, Cecy
Igual
said.
pipil.
Indigenous heritage, Cecy worked as a registered nurse for 23 years and is honored to have received multiple accolades for her writing. In her free time, Cecy creates magical worlds, heart-stopping romance, and young adult adventure. You can find Cecy laughing, crying, and cheering on her characters as she pens her next story. Let's welcome Miss Cecy Robson. Yay.
Welcome
Cue the
to
applause
me.
button.
I'm excited.
I'm so excited to have you on. I read your latest book, BloodGuard. I thought it was absolutely amazing.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm
It
so
was so
glad.
good.
It's always people have always told me, like, author-wise, it's a product. When Campbell sends out their can of soup, they're gonna say what they're gonna say about it. And I know that's the mentality that I'm supposed to have, but it's still like it still feels more personal than that, like, can of soup. You just put so much of yourself into it. And one of the things that when an author friend of mine who has been an author forever said to me, and I try to remember this as much as possible, you can be the sweetest peach on the tree, but not everybody likes peaches.
Oh, I do like that.
Good,
That is
right?
really good.
Yeah, thankfully it's been very well received, and the majority of the reviews are just like really hit me right here. I'm like, people are good to me.
Well, I want to kick things
Awesome.
off with, I guess, the first question, because we all have questions for you.
Let me have
What
it.
inspired BloodGuard?
Well, it's so funny. I think I was published for like 3 years, I think, and I wanted to do a high fantasy series. At the time, I had my urban fantasy romance series, but I'm like, well, let me try something high fantasy because I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy movies. They've just been phenomenal, and I just blew me away. I'm like, well, let me try to do something like this, except a little bit like sexier. So I came up with the concept. The first book was going to be called Gargoyle. Then it was Bloodguard. Then it was Elf King, and then Dragon Lord. So we're going back about 10 years. And Gargoyle went to acquisitions right away. And it is basically the story of who was Maeve's sister at the time. And that was Lyra. So she falls in love with, it's based on the concept of like fairy coming into our world and taking children because they can't have trouble reproducing. And it's based on in that society, the humans that come over are basically broodmares, men and women. So the men, when you breed a horse, you want the stallion, you want the strongest horse to be that male, have the male heir or whatever. And that was what the blood guard's job was originally going to be. And then the women were more oppressed, and they were sold at their 18th birthday. They were sold. So there was a lot of factors involved in it, and they loved it. It went to acquisitions, and they passed because at the time romantasy didn't exist, so they didn't know whether to market it as a fantasy or a romance. So they passed. I'm like, wait a minute, who's ahead of the game? So, because of, and they were also worried, um, because they thought it was more like interspecies date, like romance, because he was a gargoyle. But I'm like, he's just got different wings. I'm like, we do angels. They're like, no, it's different. They're bordering on bestiality. I'm like, okay, so, I know. I know, and then look at Katie Robert is like a gazillionaire. So yes, I was ahead of my time. But anyway, so my agent said, well, let's start working more on BloodGuard. This way it's human and elf and it's more accepted. And I'm like, okay. So I wrote the first battle scene in BloodGuard, which is now like is 5 chapters long. But it's still that original battle scene was the first 2 chapters. So I wrote that, and it didn't quite find a place because at the time Romanticy wasn't really picking up. But then oh my gosh, Game of Thrones took off, so people started getting more into fantasy. So about 2 years ago, my agent calls me and she said, "Send me BloodGuard." What? Send me BloodGuard. BloodGuard? I'm like, why? She could send it to me. I'm like, okay, I gotta find it because it's going back 10 years and files and files. So I picked it up. I kind of tweaked it, updated it a little bit, and I sent it. And the next day, I got an offer from Red Tower before it was Red Tower. We didn't have a name for Red Tower yet, and they just fell in love with that first battle scene and with Leith. So the concept originally had been, picking the strongest men so they could reproduce with the Fae, so they could keep their lines going, especially in the royal homes. So I thought, well, the strongest is going to have to be physically strong, so the best fighter. Well, let's make it a contest. Well, what would be a good contest? Well, the gladiator arena. What makes it going to be different? A fight to the death. Anything that would make that person more appealing in strength, in cunning, everything. So we switched it. So as opposed to addressing issues with infertility and the Fae, because that was also a sensitive topic, even though there were elves, they're like, let's work away from this. So I'm like, okay, why don't we just make it more like an immigration story where, like in El Salvador, where I was born, you can get all the education. You can have the masters, you can work really hard, but there's no job. So ultimately, you're selling juice at the market. So I thought of the concept of Leith trying to get this position because it's this only way he's going to ever make anything of his life, because he works in Ciertos, where you can work as hard as you can, but you'll never have enough. You'll never be enough. This is his way among everyone who joins that arena of wanting something better. So I thought, okay, but initially, you got to make it brutal, because if you're going for the wanting to win the New York City Marathon, you have to train, you have to be the best, you have to not stop. So it's that kind of mentality. So that's where it kind of all grew from. And I love action. I love it in equal parts with the romance. I love it. So I was in my zone.
That is so cool. I also really like how you echo that Leith can't have the opportunity where he lives. But then very shortly, in the beginning of the book, you find that maybe he can't have that opportunity in Derek either, because of all of the things that are at play. So I like how you kind of tied that in through the story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, poor Leith. I hope most of my characters, I hope he forgives me one day for everything I did to him.
So what is the series planned as now? Because originally it was Gargoyle, then BloodGuard, right? So does BloodGuard have what kind of
so I was thinking about going Elf Lord, because that's what Kaylin is. But I was told, because each novel features a different couple each time, I was told I can't do Giselle and Kaylin, even though people want to know what happens, because Giselle is just funny and they really felt attached to her. The editor felt that they were already pretty much a couple, so nobody would be as invested, because that's an old trope. Okay. So I decided to start with a new couple, and I just handed in my manuscript to my agent about almost 2 weeks ago, and it's called Death Maiden. So we got BloodGuard, Death Maiden. and it's super cool. But I wish I could tell you guys all about it, but I'm kind of like keeping it under wraps in case they change it on me. But it's so action packed. It's funny, and yeah.
I'm really excited for
That is
now.
very cool.
And also the fourth book, I had Dragon King. They're like, no, we don't do dragons anymore. I'm like, okay, like all right, yeah.
So when an editor comes to you and tells you like, "Ooh, you can't do that," what's your initial reaction like?
It depends on what they say, because
Okay.
I had written the book and we're like, we love it. And then all of a sudden we're like, yeah, I don't like this. I don't like that. I'm like, okay. But so, with some things like I'll agree with, like say, oh, I don't feel like this character is going in the right direction. You're like, okay, and you tweak it. But one of the things that really gave me pause is a lot of the sensitivity issues that came up, because initially the royals were all the elves. They were the bad guys. And I was told I can't do that because it's racist. And I said, but they're elves. And they're like, no, you're taking a group of people and making them the bad guys. So it's considered racism. So that caught me by surprise, but I'm like, okay, I don't want to offend anybody. And then it was like, oh, you're talking too much about the Irish Fae. And I said, well, yeah, that's what I grew up with. And they're like, no, that's cultural appropriation. You can't do that. So I had to make up these creatures. And I could, and originally I was told, we'll take a bunch of creatures from all over the world. All these, like, to give you an example, it's like there's these creatures in South America and Central America called ciguapas. So because even though they're familiar in the El Salvadoran culture, because they're more familiar in another country, to like, you got to make something up. We don't want to get in trouble for this. So originally I was taking like folklore and all these creatures from all over the continent. I had some from Sudan. I had them from, Germany. I had them from, the British Isles. And it was cool and I loved it. But then I had to get rid of all of them and start with new ones because it's cultural appropriation. Like, it was okay to have elves and yeah, I know. Thank you, Kate. So it was okay to have elves. It was okay to have like giants and cyclops because they weren't specific to one culture. So when some of the things I make up, like in Death Maiden, I have to make up new creatures. So one of my new creatures is, and I hope she doesn't get cut out because she's fun. She's an avian nymph.
Okay.
And they're like, well, what's that? And I'm like, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So that part of it was fun. And like, they have, in BloodGuard, there's a waitress who's like, her name is Gabby, and she makes a terrible waitress because her feet are backward and we don't know where she's coming or going. That's the actual way that a ciguapa is physically described, except I had to switch it a little bit. So because ciguapas in the Central and South American culture are based on they're women who lure unfaithful men into the woods and kill them, and you can never find them because of the way they walk. They're actually walking away from you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm like, at least I could hang on to my ciguapas.
Well, piggybacking off of that question then, sorry, Kate, did I cut you? Piggybacking off of Kate's question, nobody likes criticism at all. But
yeah, it's hard. It can be good and bad. It depends on what the approach is.
So as an author, do you find criticism easier to swallow? Like, do you find that you can find constructiveness out of most criticism? And do you tend to actually look forward to hearing of things that weren't liked or things that maybe you didn't pick up on? Or do you just prefer hearing the good stuff?
See, the problem is, if I'm continuously hearing, I don't like this, something's wrong with what I wrote. Like, all right, so there's this instance in Death Maiden where two of my beta readers and then a third said, I don't feel like they fought hard enough here. When I have three people telling me where I think I'm like, no, they did great. No, they did this. No, when I have three people telling me that, then, you have to listen. I every single time I hit the end, I cry because I feel like I have invested so much of myself in giving these characters, and I have to say goodbye to them for now, for many reasons, because I don't know if they're going to be the same when they get back to me following edits. And, you just fall in love. And whenever they get released to the world, like when I send them on my agent, I will die 1,000 deaths worried that they hate the book.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they've never hated any of my books, but obviously there's been edits for both my agent and my editor to say, like, let's elaborate on this, let's pull this out. So those things I appreciate. Criticism from people that are mean. Yeah, I specifically don't go on Goodreads because they're so mean to, like, I've seen authors like drop their careers and never write again based on some of the my friend, I'm going to mention her name, brilliant author, just starting out. She was so excited about her book, and she was destroyed on Goodreads to the point where people were actually taking GIFs and painting stories, like, to totally make fun of her. And it was just, she never wrote again. And it just broke my heart because she was a really good writer. And it was her first book. So she's so excited. She's finally getting to the point where she's, releasing her baby out in the world. And she was basically, her baby was kicked. It was told it was ugly, and it crushed her. And it was just the amount of time it took that reader to put all this together with, like, graphics and all this just to destroy someone. I just, I don't like that, like, for anyone. But that's the only time when I'm like, no, that's not okay.
Yeah, that sounds like it turned into bullying rather than.
Oh yeah, but they don't. A lot of people who go out of their way to make their review known are basically want as much attention to that review as possible, and part of it is graphics, but it is, a lot of it I've seen is bullying, and my friend wasn't the only writer who suffered as a result. And you can only tell somebody so many times that their work is great, but it's like, let me quote Madonna. Madonna back in the 90s said she can have 100 people listen to a song. 99 people can tell her they love it, but she'll always remember that one who didn't. And writers are sensitive in general, so I totally understand what she means by that. And unfortunately with some people it just sticks to the point where it hurts. We're creative people, we're sensitive people, and that's the part of the criticism I don't I stay away from. Like, I don't read reviews. I have to please my agent, I have to please my editor, and I have to hope for the best. But my husband will, if there's a particular review that he thinks would really touch me, like I had a book that I wrote of somebody who was hearing impaired. I received so much fan mail from that, and how much they appreciated that the heroine had this voice that they could relate to. So, like, things like that, like, he'll send me, or like, or like people reach out, like, oh, coolest thing ever. A guy in the military got a tattoo of the BloodGuard cover. Really? And he said he loved it so much, and he's like special ops too. He said he could relate. He related to Lee so much, and then he sent me a picture. I'm like, oh my god! And if somebody else is gonna get it on their back, and another dude is getting it too, I'm like, I made it. Forget the international bestseller. Somebody cover on their body. Now I made it.
That's incredible.
That's awesome. I can't.
Okay, so I have to ask,
Yeah.
Because I've heard from different authors that the way that they start writing something is different. Do you have your characters, are they like talking in your head? Are you more of a planner and you tell them what they're going to do?
I have conversations with my characters all the time. Like,
Okay.
I'll be in the kitchen putting dishes away to plan out the scene, plan out the dialogue. And my husband's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, my characters. Like, who else would I be talking to? So, with me, before I start a book, I kind of have this, I wouldn't call it a vision board, but kind of. I get an idea of what my characters are going to be like. What's going to make them different from Maeve and Leaf, for instance? What's going to make their circumstances different? How are they going to relate to those circumstances? Like, for instance, like, and this is, I don't want it to sound like common sense, but it's just something to think about. Somebody who's a princess like Maeve, who was born into royalty, who was born wealthy, is not going to act the same way as my new heroine, Susanna, who's been ostracized and born into poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of somebody that's been, you know, been poor and mistreated and has had to fight for survival, I think she's going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's going to know how to fight. She's going to not be silent. So Susanna is very, very much, okay, let's go. And so I started, so that's part of the process. So then I'll start looking, well, what does she look like? What's gonna soften her so she's not just somebody that's coming out and beating people up? What's gonna make her softer? What's her where's her heart? You know, what's her Achilles heel? So in developing like that. And then like I said, I'll look for pictures. I'm like, well, what should she look like? Maeve had long, straight black hair. And I'm like, let's make Susanna short hair. Like, she almost looks Afro-Latina because she's got the real curly hair.
Okay.
And she's got a little bit darker skin tone than I do. I don't know if you noticed the curls, but she's got like this short. And one of the reasons she keeps it short is because if she's fighting, you can't pull it.
Smart.
So it's like, even the way I design her hair plays a factor. You know, her hair, if it's long, is going to be used against her. But in this case, you know, she keeps it because it'll help her fight. It gets out of the way when she's fighting. So, and then I look at, I love really grumpy heroes.
Okay.
Like Leith can be very, very grumpy. Like, as one of the things that got taken out of it that I loved how Maeve would refer to him, but they're like, no, you can't use that, it's too modern. That he had resting murderer face. But they're like, but it got taken out. They're like, it's too modern. I'm like, but it's perfect for him. So yeah. So as in developing my characters, that's what I try to picture. And I also pick music for them. Like what song best fits for Susanna in this situation. If I'm writing an action scene, I listen to really hard music. Like, if I'm basically going to cry, I listen to, you know, although for this one, I had a really sad scene. So did you guys ever see the movie Love, Rosie?
No.
Okay. You have to see the movie. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I did not like The Notebook, but Love, Rosie and Me Before You destroyed me. They are so underrated compared to The Notebook, but they did. So I watched them. I'm sorry.
What was the second one?
Me Before You and Love, Rosie.
Oh, Before You. Yeah,
that one
Did you
was
see that?
Mm-hmm.
So right before I wrote the scene that I needed to, that was really heartbreaking. I watched the best clips on YouTube of Me Before You. I'm like, like just falling my eyes out. And I'm on the keyboard, like just ugly crying, but it came out great. So yeah, so as far as characters, once I have them, I always know how a book starts and how it ends. It's in between. But before I do any of it, I gotta figure out my characters. Like my enemies, for example, like the bad guys, they can't all be bad. That's boring. What's their reason? What's their backstory? What's their, you know, what is it called? The villain story?
Yeah, villain origin story.
Yes. religion origin story. I'm like, why is it like if you read about Sorrow, why is he the way he is? His father, he was never good enough for his father. The one woman he loved him, his mother, is gone. You know, he has been mistreated. He's been abused. People who have been through trauma, childhood trauma, abuse, and things, their big thing is about their power was taken away. He wants his power back, which is why he is who he is. He didn't wake up and decide, I'm going to be a bad guy. This is a result of what happened to him.
Yeah, he's living through his trauma instead of...
Exactly. And because no one in Sorrow's mind, no one's ever going to hurt him again. No one's ever going to make him feel less than. How is he going to feel like he's the best? He wants to be king. You can't put down the king. You can't make him, feel bad and live. He's getting his power back. Because everyone's like, I hate Sorrow. Yes, you do. And you should. But there's also a reason behind his madness.
Yeah. That's good. I love how thought out your characters are. And you said that you know the beginning, you know the end. So then do you just kind of let the characters go crazy in the middle and let them pick their thing?
Yes and no. It feels like it's something they would do.
Sure.
Absolutely. Go for it. But I have to be careful that it's not out of character for what they want. For each situation, does it fit that character? In this situation, is Emilio going to fight back, or he's going to step back and be like, okay, I'm being a dick? And sometimes Emilio's a dick. And Susana's more than happy to tell him. That's what I love about her. There's this great scene where, with Susana and Emilio, that he's just you're really pissing me off. He's a wizard. He's like, the next time you piss me off, the next time you do this, I'm turning you into a duck. And she's like, okay. And then she's like, quack, quack. And he glares at her. She's like, just practicing. Because she knows she's going to piss him off.
That's amazing.
So that makes sense for her. He's really mad. And he's right to be mad at her at this point because she risks her life. Mm-hmm. But that said, Susana knows she's still going to make him mad. It's not like she's going to be all of a sudden perfect. That's not her personality, so.
So you've written quite a few books. Do you have a favorite among them?
Oh, how do I pick between my kids, y'all? I do that. There are books I haven't enjoyed writing that have been harder. I think that's an easier question. One of them was Feel Me, and that deals with the hearing impaired female heroine, because I wanted to do them justice. I didn't want to create a novel where the woman would appear vulnerable, but I didn't want her to appear weak. So it was a very fine line. And another book that I wrote in my Weird Girl series is about 4 sisters that are different from any race of weird, human, vampire, and witch on Earth, and what happens when a supernatural community becomes aware of who they are and what they can do. Mm-hmm. I had already developed them. I had when it goes A Curse Awaken is actually a prequel, so I have to go back before they had their powers. How they acted when they started to gain control, because somebody who's confident and knows how to work what they need to work is going to be different than somebody that's insecure, not knowing what happens. How do we act? But I had to grow them backwards, if that makes sense. So they, it made sense. So in that sense, I could say those were the 2 hardest books for me. But it's I think when it comes to favorite novels, BloodGuard's definitely among them. But I'd have to say the character that I probably love and just because we've been together for years is Celia from my Weird Girl series, because we've been together she was my first character I ever created. So, it's hard, but It's hard to pick, like, as far as like I love my books for different reasons. One of my favorite books that I've ever written is called Union of Souls, and it's a YA, but it's never been published. So it's hard to say, you know, like as far as favorites, you know, you just love things for different reasons.
I love that title, Union of Souls.
Oh my gosh. Want to hear the other two titles? I haven't written the books yet because I want it to be picked up. It's Union of Souls, Collision of Spirits, Clash of Entities.
I want them all.
Right?
I have no idea what they are.
Yes, yes, I do too. I it's a young adult and it's a ghost story, but it's based on like a lot of cultural beliefs that I grew up with. And it's just, I love the book. I already know how the second and third book are start and end. I just haven't written it yet because I want the first to be picked up. But
We
yeah,
have
those
to
are the
annoy
names
to
of the
get
book.
this book picked up because I want.
Well, I asked my agent, now that I'm international bestselling, send it out again because it was sent and I think it went to acquisitions right away. However, the ghost in this series is a serial killer. It's based on the first serial killer on record in the United States. Right. So the really nice publishing house that wanted to print it has more of a Christian base, so they weren't ready to have a book about a serial killer. And like, I mean, and it's graphic, like the serial killer, one of the ways he kept his victims from running away because he would torture them is he would cut off their toes because you can't run without toes.
Sure. Oh God.
I know, but it's kind of funny because it's so twisted because at one point a ghost comes up to her and she shows the heroine Raven. She goes, oh, she comes over with berries clutched in her hands. And well, yeah, when she got close, yeah, those aren't berries. It's twisted, but it's funny, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited for that. That's going to get picked. I'm excited.
I hope so because I love the characters and I love what happens. And it's one of those like, all right, I got to tell you this, okay? My husband cried reading it and he never cries. And he cried reading the end of Death Maiden. And he never cries. Right, he never cries. Like, so I know there's something special there. I just hope it gets, but I loved it. I mean, I just loved everything about it. And I could actually, it's so detailed and so fresh in my mind. I could actually see it in a movie, like see it unfold in a movie fashion, just the way it, you know, creates. And it's also that that old trope about the really popular football guy and the quiet girl that, you know, gets bullied, that tries to kind of shrink into the background. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I just love it. So we'll see.
Amazing. I love it. Well, I'm very excited for that to get picked up because I feel like it's
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I just, because it went to Disney and I remember my daughter was in middle school and my babysitter slash tutor slash house sitter, now she's my hairstylist because I've known her for like 10 years. I had them sit and read it and I'm just drinking my glass of wine and it was going to Disney to Hyperion and they're like their jaws are dropping, they're like, you know, they're getting all scared and I'm like, yeah, no way is the mouse gonna want this one. Yeah. Yes, but it was I have twisted humor. I mean, in my one series, one of my vampires kind of goes nuts and they have to kill the bad guys and the vampire my vampire girls are so funny. They dress like naughty Catholic schoolgirls and that's kind of like a little jab at my Catholic upbringing. Yeah, I'm going to hell. But anyway, she's like, she kills this guy and then she starts jumping rope across with like their entrails because she's kind of lost it.
Uh-huh.
But see, that's messed up. But to me, it's funny.
I love that.
I don't want to see it in real life, but.
Well, really quick before we wrap up, do you
Yes.
have a book that you read last year that you recommend to everyone?
Yes.
You can say like one.
There's a couple.
Okay.
And this is I'm gonna say three. Okay.
Okay.
Um, Fate Inked in Blood,
Okay.
Danielle Jensen, and I got to give a shout out to my girls at Red Tower. And I actually just read two of it. Five Broken Blades, Four Ruined Realms by May Corlin. Loved it. And my other favorite is Games God's Play by Abigail Owen. I try to say, isn't she the best? She's so sweet. And I was dying before BloodGuard released. I was dying. I didn't know any of the Red Tower authors because I try to, I don't like to get into people's business, and I can be shy, to a certain point. So I didn't want to go out of my way to be like, hi. So right before BloodGuard released, like the week before, May reached out to me. And she's like, so are you ready for, your whole life to change? I'm like, no. I was worried. I'm like, I don't want to be the one to bring Red Tower down. I don't want it to go up in flames because of me. So I'm like terrified. Like I didn't want my book to be like, Red Tower sucks. So there was all this pressure. And then she was so sweet. She held my hand throughout the whole week. And so did Abby. Abby's like, it's going to be fine. It'll be great. I'm like, no. So, and plus she had such an amazing release and I was following her. I'm like, and because Games Got Play released in September and then BloodGuard released in October. I'm like, oh, why did I have to follow Abigail? Because she's so awesome. So those are my three that I really enjoyed. So, and I already, like I said, I already read May's second book that released in January. So,
oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Cecy. It's been such a pleasure.
No, thank you. Helen and Kate have been great. Please, please, please tell Megan I said goodbye. And I'm so happy, that you were lovely enough to ask me to onto your podcast. So thank you.
All of our listeners, this is Cecy Robson. Please check out her books on, they're on Kindle Unlimited, right? Kindle, Amazon.
BloodGuard is on Kindle Unlimited, but they're across all e-tailers. Books A Million, Amazon, Walmart, Target.
So wherever
you'll find me, just go to my website.
Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. And we'll all see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.